What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Sembrando Ideales. This is Guillermo, and I'm with my co-hosts Yareni and Dr. Carlos. And what's up? And we're here today to talk about three major topics. First, I want to shout out everyone that has signed up for the Patreon. Shout out to all of you guys. We really appreciate your support and for signing up for our exclusive membership and everything that comes with it. And today we're going to topic ethnic studies. We're going to talk about the DNC, and we're going to talk about the back to school and the inequalities that comes with it.
Yeah, and so we'll get into those things a little bit later. But I think the first thing we wanted to cover is California passed Ethnic Studies Bill for the CSUs. How does everybody feel about that?
I think it's a win, because there's so much bad news recently, and I feel like that's like a little, just like a little push. It's like something's good going on.
Yeah, it was sort of exciting for me. It's one of these things that we're in 2020, right? We're sitting on land that used to be Mexico since 1848. And there's people that live in California who have absolutely no historical idea or information of the fact that that happened, that they're on former Mexican land, and the primary sort of population that has been here is native people, obviously, and Mexican Americans, and they don't know anything about these folks. That's sort of stupefying. I think this ethnic studies bill should have been passed a long ass time ago. It's one of those things that it's sort of confounding. And, there's a lot of people who are pissed about it. They're like, why do people got to be forced to learn? You should learn about the people who you live around. You should learn about the people who service you. You go to any restaurant industry here in the United States, the majority of the people that are in the back are Latino. Majority of them happen to be Mexican American or Chicano. And you don't know anything about them, that's just ridiculous to me. So it's sort of it's bittersweet for me, honestly. I'm glad that it passed. It was a long time coming.
And then the fact that the majority of the students at the CSUs are African American, Latino, Asians, Americans, that I don't know how there was so much controversy over it.
And yeah, I think one of the interesting things about the controversy was that and this is actually a conversation that gets really technical, and it gets really sort of contentious because of who do we consider ethnic within the context of ethnic studies, right?
Yeah.
I think that's and we can have a whole episode in conversation just about that because you actually had some Jewish groups who were lobbying against passing the bill because it didn't include them. Do Germans count as ethnic? And I remember I was on the GE, the General Education Council for the university that I work at, and I remember when this conversation came up maybe 3 years ago because there was the Chancellor's office had put together a CSU ethnic studies task force to sort of just study ethnic studies and its benefits and that kind of stuff, and they put out recommendations. And they recommended that there be a specific ethnic studies requirement at the CSUs, and it came up in the GE conversation, and the people were like, "Oh no, we don't need to do that because at the university I work at, because we already have a human diversity requirement." And there's a huge difference between human diversity, that's like human world diversity, and ethnic studies. And so it was funny, as I recall, because it was the first meeting I had ever been to. So it was my first time on the council, and I am a lecturer. So there's a power sort of discrepancy between lecturers and full-time tenure track faculty. And so I was sitting there having to defend this thing. No, ethnic studies is very specific. It comes out of the history of oppression in the United States. It comes out of the experience of Native people. It comes out of the historical experience of Native people, and the historical experience of African Americans, and the historic experience of Mexican Americans within the context of the United States. And so some people were trying to argue like, no, Jewish folks have been, have been persecuted for a really long time. I'm like, this is all true. I'm not taking anything away from that. But in the United States, they have a different history, and so like it turns into a sort of a tug of war that is really uncomfortable to sort of have a conversation about, because anytime you defend the position of ethnic studies being largely, and also Asian Americans, I forgot to mention those earlier, it gets into a tug of war of like, we're fighting over crumbs, right? It should be a solidarity thing. Like, you want folks to learn about what your group went through, that's dope. Let's do that. I will support you to do that. But why do you have to diminish this one? You know?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it gets interesting. I want to sort of, sorry, I went on a tangent and I started just kind of going off just because I
No,
remember
it's facts. It's
what?
facts. It's facts. Like, it's real. It's true.
Yeah,
It's the history part too, because like we learn about we learned about their history during like pre-K, and then we learn about some of it in college,
yeah,
and then just apart from that, it's the white history that we are also required. Like, why isn't there a problem with the history requirement? It's history that we already learned. Like,
yeah.
why is it so bad that we
Over
learn
and
one class?
over and over and over. And like, I'm a lot older than y'all, so y'all, I have a lot more history and stories to tell. I majored in history as an undergrad. I had to take a full year, like 3 classes of Western civilization, and the majority of that was white history. And I had to take, and these are all undergrad requirements. Like, these are before I can take any upper division. These are lower division requirements. And I had to take a full year of American history. And in that American history, A, B, and C, not once did we cover anything dealing with people who look like me, who were Chicano. And whenever I brought stuff like that up, they were like, "Oh yeah, that kind of happened." Like, no, man, like, and so it's so that's that hard part. So it helps me sort of deal with my trauma of having gone through an undergrad and like masters and all dealing with like a lot of whiteness and westernness. Um, and so I'm glad now that the sort of tides are changing. And but to me, honestly, they're changing. They're changing really slow, too slow. And I'm gonna get back to this one when I get into the DNC stuff. But yeah, so it's a win. So like, sorry, I seem like I'm fucking depressing everyone right now. But like, it's one of those things where like we've been fighting for this for so long, and it's like we won, and then so we won, but then it's still a small victory because we have a lot of other work to do, right? Like,
Yeah. And just to note, it makes California the first state to require ethnic studies as a university graduation requirement in the whole country. And that's
yeah,
amazing.
that's huge because California usually leads the way, right? Like that's kind of the trends in politics. When California does something, eventually other people jump on board. And this is a huge win in the context of the fact that a couple of years ago they banned ethnic studies in like Arizona and Texas. They banned Mexican American studies. It's a huge win in that context. But even then, like, let's put it in perspective. It's a win, but it's a very small win. Like, students have to take one class. And I was really pissed off at the efforts to undermine it. Like, right before, like after it was already passed, before the governor signed it, the chancellor was, lobbying to not pass it. They passed this other social justice thing that broadened it, and you can take any class in any department. I think real victories though aren't gonna make themselves seen until we start diversifying like what universities look like in terms of who's teaching the content and material, right? So this is a huge win for ethnic studies, and I commend them. And I was a Chicano studies major when I was an undergrad, and I support it. I teach in the department now. But one of the reasons I went to go get a PhD in political science is because we need people in mainstream departments to teach that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
This is stuff that should be part of the curriculum, throughout the curriculum, not just in like one class that you happen to have to take down. And so, for instance, in poli sci, we're undergoing a process where we're looking at some of that stuff, like how can we incorporate more diversity in teaching American government. I remember I was in a conversation one time, and a professor was like, "Oh, I teach diversity when I get to the civil rights movement," and in my head I was doing that the emoji like face covering thing, like Like, dude, 1960s, we were founded in, 1609, 1607, Jamestown colony. And you go 300 years, 300 some odd years without talking about people of color.
Damn.
Like, we've been here the whole time.
Yeah, and I feel like that's also important because it's like who's teaching these courses, and it's like what better if like a Chicano or like someone who relates to it teaches it, because we don't want it to be whitewashed either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's also something to be said for brownwashing it too. Like, just because you happen to be brown doesn't mean that you're actually capable of it. And I think this is the importance of ethnic studies, is that, like, we need to train people who know this stuff, right? And it's not just like we get into the representation. It's not just about the representation and having brown professors. It's brown professors who understand the history critically, right? Because I've had brown professors who like teach me assimilationist nonsense. Like, and I'm sorry, but get the fuck out. I don't care if you're brown. Like, that doesn't matter to me. Like, I've actually, so the class I teach now, I teach racial and ethnic politics. I remember I took it from a white woman, and people were like, why is she teaching it? Blah, blah, blah. And man, but I was learning Malcolm X. I was learning I was learning a bunch of dope shit. She had us read Huey Newton, like, and she really sort of taught the material from a perspective of people of color as best she could as an ally. And so I think there's something to be said about that, is that like the representation piece is a part of it, but it's actually not the most important part for me. As a brown professor, I'm saying that, like, I've had hella like white like educators and mentors who have taught me a lot of radical politics in a way, in a better way. And that's just the I don't want to get too much into it, but that's just the politics of sort of who goes to get a master's or a PhD, right? Like, we know that Latinos, don't go to college that often, and of those Latinos that graduate, like a ton less go get their masters or their PhDs. The people that do are the ones that are privileged, and so or tend to be the ones that are privileged, tend to be the ones who were like studying and getting 4.0s when activists were out trying to change the structures of the institutions, and so you end up with sort of privileged people teaching those topics, and they're not going to challenge like the institutions that they were very successful in getting to. I say that generally speaking, but there is a few of us and a lot of us who try to do that. But I remember growing up, there was in my PhD program, there was other brown people in the department, but like most of them were just doing electoral politics, studying numbers, and like, oh, Latinos tend to vote this way. Like, well, it depends on where you're at, bro. Like, Cubans tend vote way different than Texans, and Texans vote way different than Californians. And all of it is actually like, we don't do that with a white vote. That's a whole other conversation. Sorry, I'm taking over the conversation. Y'all need to jump in and stop me and shut me up.
Okay, since we're on the topic of school, how do we feel about going back to school?
Hold on a second. Let me stop. Anything else that we want to wrap up that y'all want to say about AB 1460?
I just think that it's going to help with mental health a lot. Like, with people that are growing up, I think we need to learn about our own history. And if we don't, it causes like once we do learn about it, eventually, it's like a shock. But if we don't learn about it, we're just going to be living in ignorance.
Yeah.
So hopefully this prevents a lot of hardships for the youth.
I'm really glad that you brought this up before we wrap this segment up, because studies consistently show that students who learn about themselves and their own people and their own history do better in school. There was a Stanford study who studied this in the K-12 system. But even when you learn about other people, you learn to have compassion for their history. You learn to have compassion for their struggle. And so I think it builds solidarity. And I think ultimately that's what the benefit of this is that we need to learn about people that we're around in order to build just a healthier community and a healthier society. And I think you're absolutely right. And I think this is a good sort of point to end on is this segment, is that when you learn about yourself, you have more pride in just knowing that, you have a history, right? You're not just floating in space. And I think that's what this ethnic studies bill does, and it forces other people to learn about people who aren't just themselves. So like, one of the best classes I ever took, honestly, when I was in college was in the Black Studies department. When I learned the history, like in an in-depth way, right?
I
Like I
agree.
learned a little bit about slavery and something like not in-depth. And I took a Black Radical class, and I learned about CLR James and the slave revolts of Haiti. And I was like, dude, these fools are fucking chingones. Like that's what's up.
Yes.
Like where, and it made me hungry to learn about mine. Like where are my people? Where are my radicals at? Right? And so it sort of creates curiosity. You want to know more. You get hungry for it. And so and obviously that improves your mental health. So definitely.
I wonder how many people relate to that, because the first ethnic studies I ever took was African American history. And that's when after 2 years, I was like, I wonder what my own history is.
Yeah.
Like, that's when you open your mind into different things.
And it feeds your soul, right? Like it feeds
Yeah.
your soul to know these people, that you have a beautiful history, you have a beautiful struggle, and it helps you want to advance that struggle. And I think that's what is really like beautiful about finally we got this, that now people have to take at least one class.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully that one class leads them to want to take a lot more and to want to learn a lot more. So hopefully that opens the doorway for curiosity, solidarity, and just compassion for struggle, really.
Hopefully.
Sorry, Demi, I interrupted you. I just wanted to make sure that we wrap that segment up on a like happy note.
Yes, I agree. That is
So
fine.
we're back to school.
So back to school next week.
Back to school next week, dude. I'm not even ready, man. Like as a person who has to convert all of their material to online learning, it's been a struggle. But honestly, I think I'm on the better side. I'm on the educator side. It's not that hard, honestly. Like I have a ton of material that I'm working on right now. I'm converting and putting on, making it super technical on B-Sport and stuff. But like one of the things that I really struggle is, if it's this hard for me, like how hard is it for students whose home situation is way different than mine, right? Like I can't imagine having grown up the way that I did. I grew up poor. I grew up like with 8 people living in a 2-bedroom apartment. My bed was, in the living room. It was like when you open the living room door, it was the first thing you saw. I can't imagine having to go to school in that context, right? Like, yeah. So I don't know. How do you all feel about that? I have thoughts, obviously, but I've been dominating the conversation, and I don't want to.
I'm a little stressed. I'm not gonna lie, because it's online, and I'm taking several courses that would be a lot easier if they were in person, because of dialogue and it would be a lot easier. So that's why I'm stressed. And it's hard being home all the time, because I can't focus. I mean, as some of you know, I literally go to the library and study on Sundays. Like I'll do that because it just helps me get out of my house. So
you're such a nerd, Demi. I say that jokingly, and I say that lovingly. That's dope, though. Like, do you have that kind of discipline?
Yeah, so it's like staying home. It's just like thinking about having to juggle so many stuff at home. It's stressful.
I feel you, because there's our chores, our parents, and then just like this, for the last 2 years, I was barely getting used to the fact of studying at school, and the fact that studying at school is more motivation, because you see people studying, you see people around you doing their work.
You get to study groups and just talk to people, but and then now you can't, because it's even I guess I saw that even to go on campus you have to do this pre-screening and stuff.
Yeah. So I mean, it's and I try to think of this obviously within the context of capitalism. So y'all know me, I'm always thinking that, always. And so for me, it's really interesting that the human piece of this, how it's changed our human lives. Like before, capitalism had us on such a busy schedule that we got used to, we got socialized into, we got normalized into, that what you come home at the end of the day, everybody's living their own little life, right? Your mom goes to work, your dad goes to work, you go to school, your brothers, they go to their school, your sisters, so everyone's living their own little life. And you come back at the end of the day, you regroup, and you're like, hey, how was your day? Whatever. But you're not spending that much time with people, right? Now everybody's having to try to continue to live their own little life in the same space, right? In a really confined space. Like, you know, if some of us, I'm lucky I have a 2-bedroom apartment with where my daughter like lives. It's just me and my daughter. But imagine this, and this is the part that I struggle with, is imagine like, you know, you're a working class poor kid and you got 3 or 4 brothers and sisters and you all share a room and you all have to take classes in the same, and you know, at the same time in the same context. Like you're fighting over the desk, you know, shit. I remember growing up, we didn't have a desk. So like, you know, like I can't imagine like having to fight, like I have students who like legit have to take their classes outside next to their neighbor's house because they're bumming internet off of their neighbors. Mm-hmm. And so it's one of those like, dude, like, and I don't think a lot of professors, and it's exactly because of what we talked about before, because of who gets a PhD, it tends to be privileged people or people who just work really hard. And I don't think a lot of them understand that. Like, I don't think they, you know, oh, if you don't show up, you know, like at first I was gonna have a policy where I wanted to see people's faces because like, it's hard for me to teach to a bunch of blank screens. Like it really is, because I can't see your face. Like right now I can see your faces. I can see whether you're following me or not. If you're confused, I can see that, right? But when I can't see your face, I don't know if you're getting it or not. And then I started thinking about, well, why aren't people showing me their screens? It might be because, you know, they got brothers and sisters that are watching behind them because their mom is working and they have to be a babysitter but also take the class. It might be because they have brothers and sisters also in class behind them because they're in a confined space. And this really gets into the inequities of capitalism, honestly. Like, you know, like capitalism exploits the shit out of working class people, and especially Latinos and Chicanos, to the point that, like, you look at all the COVID-19 rates, like, who's affecting the most. Latinos are the most affected. Why? Well, because Latinos tend to live in super urbanized areas. Why? Mm-hmm. Because, like, it's expensive. Fucking rent is expensive anywhere in the country. And so, especially anywhere there's jobs. And so, yeah, we're confined to, like, an apartment complex that has like 50 people living in it. Your neighbors are like next door, and some of these buildings are fucking like, excuse my language, but some of these buildings are fucking like infested with like, rats, roaches. Their walls are super fucking thin because they were built for profit. They weren't built to like be like decent homes. Mm-hmm. So, like, you can't really physically distance from your neighbor because, dude, if they cough, their kitchen window is right next door to your kitchen window. That shit filters over. It's just really unfortunate. Like, and I don't think this is, I think the part that's hard is I don't know if a lot of professors are aware of that or really understand that context. And so I know that a lot of students are really stressing out. And this goes back to the point you made, Guillermo, about mental health, that like that students are worried that they're gonna not be able to produce the same way because the context is just way different. And honestly, I like as a professor myself, I don't know. I'm struggling with the expectations, right? So like, we're all figuring this shit out together.
And I can't imagine it's be for like kids. Because what if their parents just talk Spanish or another language, and they have to like
imagine kids?
Yeah, and they have to get used to like getting like the Zoom together, getting all their school supplies, and keep. They have to be the teacher for their kids, getting their homework too. Like, oh, we have to. It's not just in a tarde doing your homework. It's like all day figuring out your schedule. And what if they have to work, and they're kindergarten, like you said?
I think about it, and like, I used to cry when my mom would help me do my math homework. Like, I can't, and she did, like, I can't imagine like kids now, like them trying to figure, like parents who don't know about technology trying to like navigate that and figure that out.
Or this is the part. So it's not even that. I remember my dad, like, and as a kid, I feel really bad. I feel really guilty because as a kid, my dad tried to help me with my math homework, but he couldn't do it the way that we do it here.
And then we're like, oh no, you don't even know.
Yeah, and then I would think he was stupid, right? Like, so I feel bad for thinking as a kid, like, oh my dad, you're dumb, you don't know how to do it. right? Because that's what this educational system does, right? It privileges a certain kind of knowledge over other kinds of knowledges. Now that I'm older, I actually recognize that the way my dad was doing the math was actually like the best way because it was the shorthand way. He used to do the little X and put the numbers in different. I don't know if you guys know that Mexican way to do it.
Yeah.
But it was really shorthand. And so now that I have to help my daughter with fucking Common Core math, I'm like, what the fuck is this shit?
It's so confusing.
Like why? Like why?
Like that.
Like why? This is fucking stupid. Who came up with this? Now that I feel stupid, I recognize, dude, I was really hard on my dad as a kid. Like my dad obviously knew math way better. He was like, like now that I gotten to know my dad as a person rather than just as my dad, like dude, he's smart as shit. But the system treated him like he wasn't because he just happened to do math differently, right? So I can't imagine what parents are going through right now, like having to teach their kids how to use fucking Zoom, having to teach their kids how to use all these websites, Kahoot. Dude, imagine a kindergarten who doesn't know how to use a fucking mouse, right? And they know how to use a tablet because kids who grow up with phones and tablets now. But like I remember the first time I gave my daughter a mouse, she's like, "What the fuck is this thing?" Yeah, so it's really unfortunate. Like, and I think as long as we take an approach where a lot of us sort of just do the best we can, right? Recognize that these are special circumstances. Help other people. Help people in your community. If you know there's people in your neighborhood who need help, help them as best you can while keeping socially distant. That's the other part that's hard about this, right? Is that there's some of us who can organize. Yeah, let's go into communities and teach people how to do some of these things and to like make it easier for them. But we can't because we have to maintain social distance. Like I have one of my best friends. His parents got COVID a couple of weeks ago, and so like I've been wanting to go over there and just kind of see how they're doing and like bring them food and stuff. But it's like like you can't. And I think like that adds to the mental health aspect of all of this. Like, and I think you're absolutely correct.
For kids, for the parents.
I have a couple of friends who their kids started school already, and like they're like, man, what the fuck is this, dude? Like their kids are falling asleep on the couch is exactly because of what Guillermo said. Like you're at home, like you need a different space because your brain functions differently in different spaces. Right? Like if I'm at home, I want to sit on my fucking comfortable ass couch and watch TV and relax. Like I don't want to teach inside of my home. My home is supposed to be my comfort zone, not my work busy zone. And so it's hard for everyone, but like especially kids growing up, man. Like you know what? And the kids are resilient, right? They're gonna, people are worried about what they're gonna miss out on. Like if anything, my daughter's smart as shit. The thing that she misses the most is just interacting with other kids.
Yeah.
I think that's the part that that is unfortunate for kids is that they're not building those social emotional bonds, especially like kids that are just starting school. Like kindergartners, dude, I have no idea what that's like, and that's gonna eventually, hopefully things get better and they go back to school in a safe way, where people aren't getting sick and they do that. But it's just I don't think when you're going through it you recognize just the like craziness. I don't say crazy, maybe the just like like when you're in history you don't recognize that you're in it.
Oh yeah.
This is historic. Like one of the things that as the director of the foundation, one of the things that I hope we can do is I hope we can reimagine education. But because we're so on the defensive of just trying to like provide a basic education, I don't think people are really trying to give that like, how does this give us an opportunity to rethink how we do education? And I won't get into education because the educational system in the United States was made to produce workers and it was made to produce like, it's like a factory system to churn out students into the labor force. But I hope that people are beginning to at least start to think about, and if not, please do so. If you're out there, you're an educator, you're a teacher, you're a school administrator, think about how we can use this opportunity in this crisis to rethink how we do education. Maybe we create more localized systems of education that not only wealthy people can do, like, people are creating little pods, like education pods. And that's obviously a privilege thing, but like how can we do that in communities that actually need them and benefit them? Yeah, I don't know what else to say. Sorry, I take over.
Going back to that, there's like also to ethnic studies, there's a separate bill that's expected to be taken up to legislator that is going to make ethnic studies required at all public high schools. So I feel like that's going to help also with the struggles of kids going into higher education. And it just has like it's gonna prepare them also to be into the system a little better.
Yeah, I feel like all of that is needed. It just like everyone's just struggling right now, and I honestly don't know how to say anything that's gonna make it better. It's just we're in the COVID context. Don't get me started on the California fires that are going on, and that like how we don't have firefighters because most of the firefighters that we use for those are inmates, and like half of the inmates are like they can't go because they have COVID. Mm-hmm. So it's just man, all of it is. It seems like it's the apocalypse, man. Fucking thunderstorms never happen in California. Fucking heat waves is crazy.
I saw this ocean tornado in Miami the other day.
Yeah, there's fire tornadoes too. Like that was a thing. Fucking Sharknado is actually a real thing, apparently.
What are those?
You don't know what a Sharknado is?
Is it like a circle of sharks?
You guys don't know about that movie, Sharknado? Like they made like 5 of them. They're like these B movies that come on the cable channel, but like it's basically a tornado. It's a movie. It's a tornado that brings in sharks that attack people and they jump out and they kill people because they're sharks in a tornado that like are just it's kind of like an action horror movie type thing. But they made a bunch of like weird ones. But like, dude, like what you're describing, like if there's a tornado in the ocean that technically could actually pick up sharks. Currently, right now in New Orleans, I have a friend who's out there. There's two hurricanes, 2 of them, who are like both headed towards New Orleans and the coast of Texas. Like, imagine if they get this, man. All of this global warming.
And Mexico was like the tropical thunderstorm too, like the hurricane warnings when I was over there.
Yeah,
there's just so much going on.
All of it, man. And then COVID, and then like people trying to just live their lives and just trying to fucking feed themselves, and capitalism doesn't allow that. Like, honestly, I said this before, I think when I interviewed with Guillermo one time, like if we had just used money and just shut down everything and let people just fucking like stay home for 3 weeks, like we could have avoided all of this. Like, just, at the very beginning, let's just give everybody some money. Companies would have been fine because you gave people money, they're going to spend the money. But no,
it would have just been 3 weeks, literally.
We're 6 months in.
Haunting mess.
We're 6 months into a president who prefers to golf, and he cares more about fucking like talking shit to Goodyear tires. So let's go ahead and get into the DNC, I guess.
Yes.
What do folks think about that? Like, one, we can start off with the VP pick that preceded the DNC. What do y'all think about Kamala Harris?
I wasn't surprised when I heard because, I mean, it just makes sense. Like, who else was he going to pick?
Guillermo, you're like...
Or Andrew Yang.
What happened?
It could have been her or Andrew Yang. I feel like that was like the top 2 people that could have been chosen. But
he had already committed to choosing a woman. So like, I think a couple of people who were kind of being mentioned were Stacey Abrams from Georgia. There was another person from California who was a progressive. I knew he wasn't going to go progressive route. Like, Kamala was the safest bet. And in the context of the whole like election cycle, like it made sense. Oh, like let me reconcile with the person who went after me on stage. Like now it just seems staged that she did that, right? Like.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that he made that comment about African Americans like a few weeks ago, like in a way, it's a way to like, because I feel like he had lost the black vote in a way.
I don't think so, man. Like, so I mean, he gaffes a lot, right? He says a lot of shit that's fucked up, and like, you know, African Americans are pissed off at him for a lot of different things. But like, if you, I mean, look at North Carolina, man. How did North Carolina like go out for him? Like, you know, like just look at the list. He was a segregationist. He was, you know, he passed the anti-crime bill, a bunch of anti-crime bills. Specifically, the most punitive one was the Bill Clinton one. He was at the forefront of that. Um, but anyway, so like, yeah, like you know, it was when I found out it was Kamala, I wasn't surprised. And just in the context of like, you know, Black Lives Matter, defund the police movement, like for us to like, it just makes sense. It makes sense that the Democrats would pick the top cop. You
And
know,
it's kind of like a slap in the face because it's like you have this whole movement of people calling for the abolishment of ICE, of the police, and it's like, oh no, we're gonna give you this instead.
yeah,
Exactly.
it's exactly the problem with our politics. It's a lot of it is symbolic representation or symbolic. Like, you know, we'll give you hashtags, we'll give you street paint, you know, we'll paint Black Lives Matter on the street, but we won't actually give you real structural change. And that's what the Democrats kind of represent. You know, like, and not to dissuade our listeners or our viewers any, like, we're not at all advocating for Trump. Fuck the Republicans. I fucking say that shit openly. I don't give a fuck because they're the fucking
Racist.
worst. They're the worst, you know, fucking garbage in like, you know, like the way that they have, you know, treated undocumented people. Like, you know, and sometimes I hear and I agree with, you know, like I don't like Obama. You know, you all know that about me. You know, Obama, he had an opportunity to change so many things when he had a super majority in Congress and the Senate, and he didn't do anything. Or, you know, he passed the ACA, Obamacare, which is watered down. He was trying to reach across the aisle. I understand the politics of what he was trying to do. He was trying to build an inclusive America, but like, there's just some people who are never going to do that. And so like, I get that, but at the same time, like, Trump has taken some of that and just done way worse. So like, you know, the separating kids. Have you guys seen that Netflix show Immigration Nation?
I haven't had the guts to watch it.
Yeah, so it's, you know, it's one of those things where I get it, right? There's, you know, trigger warnings and whatnot, and people get triggered and all that, and so I understand that. I want to be sympathetic and empathetic towards that. The thing is, for me as a former undocumented immigrant, I feel like I owe it to my parents to watch that because they were deported a couple of different times, and as also privileged as I am to have been able to get amnesty under a different immigration regime, I feel like it's my responsibility to see what people are going through currently, even if it's triggering for me or triggering for us. About, you know, some people, oh no, like, you know, it's triggering because my parent, like, yeah, but you know what, like, I don't think you really understand what people go through until you see it, right? Like, for real, like, I've heard the stories about my parents a bunch of times, but I think that stuff is really legit. It matters, you know. Like, I fucking hate that I have to vote for Biden, but like, that shit's gonna matter.
It
Like, who
does.
gets to appoint the next Supreme Court justice? And so I have this conflicting position, right? And this is one of the things I hate about politics is that everybody tries to simplify it. Like, in politics is not simple. It's not a like, oh well, if you don't vote for Biden, then it means you support Trump. Like, nah, stop vote shaming people. There's 126 million people who don't vote every single fucking year or every election. Don't vote shame the people who aren't voting for Biden because he didn't earn their votes. Go, if you really care about people voting for Biden, have them go out into the community and organize 126 million people to go vote for your candidate. Make him attractive enough that those people want to go out and vote for him, right? So, but people are lazy; they don't do that. So, you know, I saw that. Let's, you know, get into the actual DNC. I saw some of it. Honestly, I couldn't sit through it. Like, I'll be honest. Like, I couldn't sit through all the like navel gazing, all the ass kissing, all the like, you know, all the like touchy feely stuff. Like, Michelle, like, we need to have more compassion. Man, where the fuck was your husband's compassion when he was dropping bombs on 7 countries in the Middle East? We need to have more. We need to care about each other more. Like, oh, you mean like how you down talk to people of color when you tell them to pull themselves up by their bootstraps? And so, you know, Like, and then even people like being pissed at AOC. Like, how do what y'all think about that?
It's ridiculous because it always happens. And then they were like talking about her word colonization, referencing that. Like, it's just I don't get it. Like, how can you continuously? And then also for her they didn't get why she was nominating Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
It's just like, do your research, please.
Well, I mean, you know, she was asked to by the Democratic establishment to like fulfill an actual role that needed to be done because he had a ton of delegates. Those delegates needed to be seated, and in order to do that, he has to accept the nomination. And so you go through the you know these things that have to happen. And she was asked to do that by the Democrats, and obviously it was pre-recorded, so like she didn't go off book. If she went off book, they wouldn't have aired it. But there's some bullshit there too, like you know the mayor of Long Beach, Mayor Garcia. They had him talk. What the fuck he's got to say? like yeah, he spoke. He was one of the speakers. He's one of the Latino representative speakers, and he spoke about COVID and his mom. And so, like, you know, I won't talk mess about that. But this fool is a neoliberal. He's fucking gentrified the shit out of Long Beach. He you know, he sides with big business all the time. He's in the pocket of developers. Like, what's he got to say about, you know, Latino representation in Long Beach? Also, I couldn't sit through his speech just because I heard him speak at a Chicano Latino graduation a couple years ago. I was actually the Grand Marshal when he did it, and I like not to toot my own horn, but I think I did better in 5 minutes than he did in 15 or 20. Like, his speech was terrible. Like, and I also want people to recognize that he's only recently been touting his Latino-ness. Like, the year before that, he didn't. Chicano Latino grad people had asked him to be the guest speaker, and he said no because he doesn't really identify as Latino. He said that to them. He said that he identifies more with the LGBTQ community, and that's cool. Like, I have no beef with that. You know, intersectional politics, you can identify as whatever you want. But like, it's been lately politically expedient for him to like own his Latino-ness. I won't get into the fact that he's a Republican. Like, he started the college Republicans at Cal State Long Beach, and he tries to hide that, but he did. And he worked on George W. Bush's campaign as a staffer, like a low-level staffer, not on his like high-level administration stuff. But anyway, so they had him speak longer than AOC got to speak. Like, do they not recognize that AOC is the future of the fucking party? This is what pisses me off about the Democrats. I want to reform the Democrats because the Democrats at one point in time did, to some degree, serve the interests of the working class, however limited. But I think there's potential in our two-party system. Voting for a third party is a protest vote, but you're not building power. Like, honestly, like they've rigged the system in a way that like only the two major parties get funding, only the two major parties like technically count. And so I want to commend people who are trying to organize third-party systems. Other countries have multi-party systems where you have to do things differently, and that's cool in that context. But like, you know, y'all know that I'm a Gramscian. Like, you got to build power within the context that you're in. And in our current context, there is only the Democrats, and so I'm in love with AOC because she's building the left wing part of the Democratic Party that was just missing for a long time. And so we see victories like with Cori Bush and other people, other progressives who are winning office, who are winning Congress seats. And so it's going to take time to build that, right? But they gave more time to this guy, this local mayor, than AOC, who has a national profile, who is loved. She is loved by Democrats, independents, and even some conservatives, like, love her. And it's just like they, you know, and the other piece of it too is that there was no Latino representation outside of a couple of people. Do they not recognize that Latinos are the future of the party? Like, that pisses me off.
And I think
I like this show because I get to vent, folks. It helps me with my mental health.
Stress reliever.
It's true though. Like, she's been able to maneuver into the Democratic Party like with the Democratic Socialist tag, but either way, she's made her way into the party.
And
Also
good,
standing
right?
firm. She's firm with what she's against.
And she's brilliant. Like the way she answers questions, like people try to get our news cycle is built on gotcha moments. Like, I got you. I asked you a hard question. You don't know how to answer. And then she comes back with an answer. So the question, she was asked about, what does a community look like, when you defund the police? And she's like, we already know because suburbs are like that. Suburbs don't have more policing. They have, more community service. Like, so she's like brilliant. And I think I'm excited about the future of, building more people like her. There's obviously more people who are suffering right now in the context of COVID and the crisis, and economically, the addictions crisis is looming. All kinds of things are happening. But I think the fact that there's people like her who are being motivated to jump into politics and to not allow it to continue to be a like rich person's game. I think that's really important. I think that's really important. The last thing I'll say about the DNC is, people keep telling me, I have some moderate friends who keep telling me like, oh, this is the most progressive policy platform we've ever had. I mean, in relation to Bill Clinton, in relation to these conservative people who pose as Democrats, like, yeah, like just because you're more progressive than like crap doesn't mean that like you're like it's good for human beings. They took fossil fuels, ending fossil fuels off the platform. It's the most, so yeah, like we have a lot of work to do, basically. One of the things that I'm not, people keep telling me, oh, you should be happy because it's a progressive platform. The other thing I mentioned to you all earlier was there's a huge difference between it being a progressive platform and then you actually implementing that stuff if you win. So, a lot of it is lip service. I've been hearing about immigration reform for 20 years. Obama talked about immigration reform. He never did it. Oh, but DACA, man, DACA, like, the mental health of people having to live year to year, every 2 years, having to reapply. That shit's expensive. That shit is grueling. Like, having to live your life perfectly because if you get some kind of like stupid jaywalking ticket, you might not be able to like be eligible for DACA. Like, that's just ridiculous.
Yeah,
so
it pushes this false idea that there's a perfect immigrant.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's important too. Is that like you have to be a perfect immigrant, right? And so and so you get into the question of deservingness, like who deserves to be a citizen? It's like, nah, motherfuckers, like everybody deserves to be a human being. Like citizenship is about being a human being. It pisses me off that goods and services can flow freely through the border. Like I can buy some shit from China and it arrives here tomorrow. Like inanimate objects have more rights than human beings.
In our own country, like undocumented but essential, the farm workers that are working in this heat, like we have no rights. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, how are you considered an essential worker but also an illegal worker, right? Like that's the part that like blows my mind. And until stuff like that actually change, then I'll be like, all right, you know what? Thank you for changing that. I appreciate that. But you putting it on a platform doesn't change my understanding of what you've done in your history. And your history has shown that you don't support those kinds of things. Mm-hmm. I hope it changes. I hope he's able to be pushed to the left further, and I'm not even the left. He'd be pushed to the center, honestly, like because he's like they're on the right. This is the whole triangulation thing with the 1990s and how like Bill Clinton, his positionality. What they did is they met the conservatives halfway, but the conservatives keep going rightward. You can see that by who's talking at the RNC this week or next week. I don't know when it is. It's all these like, dude. Have you guys seen the speakers list for some of the people? So the people that held guns up to Black Lives Matter protesters, like the couple, they're gonna speak. The white kid who was wearing a MAGA hat and was talking shit to people of color, he's gonna speak. I'm surprised they haven't booked Steve Bannon since he got arrested the other day for fraud. That's another one too. Like that. Like I think it's hilarious. They raised $25 million to build the border wall, like privately, right? And those people stole the money. It's like, oh, you didn't trust these people who were liars? Oh, I'm sorry. They took your money?
You want bad?
Yeah, I posted something on Facebook the other day. I have there's a saying by my parents. that supposedly Jesus said this. I'm pretty sure he didn't, but Jesucristo dijo, ya me voy y ahí los dejo, que viva el más vivo del más pendejo. And it's basically like, I'm out, peace y'all, like, whoever's stupid, like the smart one, so like if hey, they stole your money, that's your dumbass fault for fucking giving them money to build a wall. Like, you should be giving your money to your community to improve the conditions in your community, not like to build the stupid wall. Sorry, we've covered a ton of stuff. We have a lot more thoughts on a lot of this stuff. Any last minute sort of comments before we get into a couple of announcements before we close off? Y'all want to wrap up your thoughts on the DNC and Biden? I should say something.
I just hope that.
Yeah, y'all are really enthusiastic for Biden. I love it. Y'all go for Biden. Viva Biden. Yo con Biden.
I just think it shouldn't be like the last time, because people were like, I'm not going to vote for Hillary and I'm going to vote for a third party. And nothing, like, it's just too dangerous to have Trump for another 4 years.
It definitely is. So, like, I'm not going to tell people how to vote. What I am going to tell people is, if you're going to vote for Biden and you care about that position, go organize. Go knock on doors, go canvass, go phone bank. If you really want Biden to win, go do that. Like, I'm not going to do that. But don't vote shame me for, I'm going to vote for Biden, but like, I'm not going to go out and work for him. But at the same time, don't vote shame people who do vote for third party. It's not them, man. It's 126 million people out there who haven't voted, who don't vote. Go get their votes. Go earn their votes. This is one of the things that Hillary did. She got lazy. She didn't go out and earn those votes.
She was just interviewing the people that, and going to interviews where she thought that we were going to be interested in.
Yeah, I mean, she didn't even campaign in, like, was it Wisconsin or Michigan? I don't remember which state. Like, that was the battleground state. She didn't go. So I hope Biden is smart and he doesn't make those same mistakes. I think there's a lot riding on this. I think, honestly, like, to protect vulnerable people, I think those of us that can vote should vote to protect those people while still doing the community work that we need to do. But at the same time, I also understand you not wanting to. So if you're out there and you're mad at people like that, like, stop being mad at people like that and go canvass and door knock for Biden. All right, a couple last announcements that we have. Lenny, you want to take us away?
Yes, so don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Sembrando Ideales and at Econ Democracy, sorry. And the podcast is now available on Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts. And if you want to watch the video version, it's also on YouTube. The YouTube channel is the Foundation for Economic Democracy.
And then also, we will be posting them onto our Instagram channel. But remember, if you become a member, you get early access to our podcast content. So make sure that you become a member and help us support this project, help us grow it, help us grow economic democracy in the Southern California region. Thank you for tuning in with us. I apologize. I dominate conversations a lot. I'm animated. I get mad about stuff. I care about politics. I care about the well-being of human beings, and there's so much to talk about in each respect of that. So hopefully you'll tune in to hear us vent some more with you. And hopefully I will learn to shut my mouth a little bit more.
And if you guys have any suggestions of topics you want to hear us talk about, let us know in the comments.